Okay, so thank you everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining the 13th Annual MCPS FY 2027 Operating Budget Palooza, presented by the Montgomery County Taxpayers League and co-sponsored by the Parents Coalition of Montgomery County. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and will be available online for replay. We have a full agenda for you this evening, and so we will start. First, we just want to recognize all of our elected and appointed officials that have joined us. If you want to raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we're happy to acknowledge you. Maybe Paula, I can have you acknowledge all of our candidates that are running for public office or our currently elected officials for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, all of you. I guess I don't really have that in the chat. It doesn't seem like these people are coming up. Oh, Adam Van Grack, thank you so much for coming. Who else have we got?
If you look into participants, you can see everyone's names.
Judd Ashman. Okay, let's see who else we've got. Oh, Maldonado, thank you. Sorry, guys, I'm just kind of looking at the list here. We've got Hannah Wilkove, who's representing Councilmember Evan Glass, who's also a candidate, as we know. Adam Van Grack, thank you so much. And you'll be speaking for a few minutes as well. Let's see, who else have we got here? Arheld Maldonado, who's running for County Council. Wiley Chase, who's running for Board of Education. Thank you. Marilyn Balcom, who's on the County Council and is running. Again, thanks. Reardon Sullivan, who is also running. Let's see who we've got. Sorry, Ricky Mew, who's running, I believe, for County Council. Let's see who else have we got. If I forget someone or don't see someone, please let me know. We've got, I think that is it.
Anyone hasn't been acknowledged, please let us know. We don't mean to miss you. Rocky Whitesell?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Running for
Thanks.
County Council District 4.
Thank
Terrific.
you.
Okay.
All right. We've gotten everyone.
We've got Joseph from Councilmember Lorianne Sales' office. So thank you for coming. Rick Mew is a candidate for County Council. Thank you for joining.
Awesome.
I think we've got everyone covered.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So we'll go ahead and get started. And so Fitz, if you can allow everyone in as well. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. And so next slide. So here's our brief agenda that we are going to cover. We'll do introductions and recognition. So we just completed that. We will discuss the FY 2027 operating budget, and we will go over questions and answer portions throughout our presentation. So please, if you have something to say, raise your virtual hand and we will monitor the chat or put your questions in the chat, and we're happy to engage. It's going to be very interactive. So thank you again for coming out. And at the end, we will give you a call to action and ways that you're able to participate in your government.
Let me interrupt here because I just see that Prabhu Selvam, who's also a candidate, has just joined us. So thank you for joining as well.
Yes, for County Council. Thank you.
Right.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I will introduce the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. So again, my name is Esther Wells. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. And the mission of the Taxpayers League is to educate and advocate for county taxpayers. We support appropriate actions to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness in county government and tax equity for Montgomery County taxpayers and communities. So over to you, Paula, to introduce the Parents Coalition of Montgomery County.
Sure. Many of you already know the Parents Coalition. We were formed in 2002, and we focus mostly on Montgomery County Public Schools, seeking to achieve the goals of coherent, content-rich curriculum standards with high expectations, a wider range for educational options for all the children in our county, much greater transparency and accountability, and we focus on that quite a bit. So the Budget Palooza is right up our alley, and we push for transparency and meaningful community input.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so with that, you will continue, Paula, on the background.
Sure. As I said, we've been doing the Budget Palooza since 2013, and every year we join to do a very deep dive into the proposed operating budget because we realize at the beginning it's a big, complex budget, a lot of money, and the board does not originally seem to pay very close attention. So this is our 13th year of organizing this. And just a reminder that this budget, the $3.778 billion, is almost half of our entire county budget. So everything else has to be covered with the other half of the budget. As you know, first responders, libraries, roads, transit, everything. So in this case, our goal for this Budget Palooza is to examine the budget again in detail and temper MCPS FY 2027 operating budget to reflect our current economic conditions. What we decided to do this year is different. If you've gone and watched us before, because it's such an unusual situation this year financially, people are stressed. We decided to do something different while we discuss the proposed operating budget. We know everyone's feeling the strain. We're feeling frustrated because there's constant news coming out of government agencies, MCPS, the planning board, county council, MDOT, everything. So we decided, because this is a very unusual year, we're going to go through the budget partly as we usually do, but instead add focuses on issues of concern that are tied to specific budget chapters. And this is an informal Budget Palooza. We are all volunteers. If you have something to say, say it. Let us know. We want to hear from you, because this is all community driven. So let's go. Here we go.
Yeah, and so you can see here, there are 6 sections that we're going to cover throughout the presentation. And so thank you again in advance for your attending, and please participate as much as you can. We're happy to make this interactive. And so with that, first off is the current climate, economic conditions of MCPS, headlines and student enrollment. And so you can see here that MCPS's economic conditions, the County Council's economic conditions are very stagnant. We have a flat personal income growth here. And so on February 5th, 2026, the Montgomery County Council staff recommended establishing the maximum FY 2027 aggregate operating budget for the entire county, including MCPS, based on the increase in average personal income of about 1%. The staff cited that the current economic conditions in the county are noticeably worse than last year. And the expectation is that the trend will continue to worsen throughout 2026. The purpose of this guideline is to establish an amount that is affordable for county residents, not need. Personal income growth remains stagnant at 1%, which is lower than the Social Security cost of living adjustment growth of 2.8%, suggesting that residents' purchasing power is not keeping pace with inflation adjustments. The county's population growth is estimated to be muted for the foreseeable future, averaging around 0.6% annually. Revenue increase of $130.5 million is modest when compared to recent revenue increases of $376 million for last year's FY 2026 growth. The county's unemployment rate surged last year, coupled with job market decline and volatility in our high-value sectors like professional services, business services, and federal government jobs. So with that, we wanted to just lay the land and give you an idea of some of the headwinds faced by the county and residents and taxpayers as we enter into budget season. On this slide, what you can see is, time for something different. So as Paula mentioned, we wanted to centrally locate all of the issues or concerns or advocacy work that has been out there in MCPS over the last few months. And so I'm sure when you read the list, we try to be comprehensive, but there's at least 1 or 2 items that would resonate with you as to why you wanted to show up today, or things that you're seeing in your family, with your students, with your children, with your taxes, with your budget, that we wanted to cover and just make you aware that you're not alone. And so one of the first items we mentioned is MCPS continues to propose unprecedented operating budget increases during significant ongoing decline in student enrollment for the foreseeable future. We also know everyone is well aware of the boundary changes and the current school safety and security concerns following the Wooten shooting, Wooten High School shooting this week. And so I don't know, Adam, if you wanted to come off mute and just talk a little bit about the advocacy work you've been doing there as one of our current Rockville County City Council members.
No, sure. I would just note that even before anything that had happened recently as last week, the mayor and council did submit a letter with regard to the operating budget. And our mayor, Monique Ashton, eloquently presented this to the Board of Education. But two of the areas that we really are focusing on, one was the support of the school security teams. I think it's more relevant now, given what has happened, that we need to ensure that there is security for our students, and it's got to be a key priority. And I know it's a key priority, at least for the community surrounding Routen after last week. And also another thing that we did specifically ask for even an increase is the maintenance teams. We are continually seeing schools like Wootton, like Twin Brook, like Quince Orchard throughout the county that are having failing maintenance, that if we were increasing that budget, we potentially would not be having some of the facilities problems that we're having. So those were two areas that I know our mayor, Monique Ashton, specifically put forward, and that the mayor and council unanimously put forward for MCPS, that if anything, are only more true now given what's happened in the past few weeks.
Right. No, that's totally spot on. And we will see and discuss further in the presentation where those items come in, how much MCPS is proposing in their budget. And exactly to your point, is just ensuring that all of our students, safety is first before they are available to learn. And so we need to ensure when things like this happen that we're not being reactive, but we're being proactive. And so other items here, you've had some time to review. We did want to call out a few items, such as the shockingly low performance of the Black and Brown students in reading, and especially math, which requires urgent attention, according to our Black and Brown Coalition, and also the declining graduation rates. It's at a 5-year low for MCPS students. We know in Up County, the Damascus High School, we've had issues with mold, delay, rebuild, and expansion proposed, PPW staffing cuts, which we all also talked to, and the first ever charter school in Montgomery County, and how that's going as well. And so definitely take a look. This will be available online, but we know that there's a lot going on with MCPS, and it's critically important that we are advocating for our needs in our community. And so on the next slide, here, what we are proposing, what MCPS is proposing on January 6, 2026, the Board of Education operating budget, MCPS Superintendent Taylor commented on projected enrollment by stating that we unfortunately are very confident in this. If anything, this may be a conservative number. Unfortunately, we think there's a potential that this can be more significant and not less significant in terms of the declining enrollment. So as we discussed, County Council staff reported that the county's population growth is estimated to be muted for the foreseeable future, averaging around 0.6% annually. And so maybe I'll pause there to turn over to you, Paula. Are there any questions in the chat or hands raised on anything we've said thus far?
I don't see any specific questions. I do want to say, call out, thank you, Laura Stewart, who's here from the Board of Education, Scott Goldberg, who's a candidate for County Council, and Rocky Whitesell, who's also running for County Council. So I just want to make sure I got everybody covered.
Yes,
I don't see.
Wylia Chase had joined as well, also running for Board of Education at large.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, then we will continue. And again, if you have questions, please raise your virtual hand or place your questions in the chat, and we're happy to make this very interactive. So our next section that we will cover relates to the superintendent's letter in Table 1A, which I will cover also in conjunction with Gordy Brenny, who is our treasurer of the Montgomery County Taxpayers League. And so this slide that I have here is one of the key slides for today's presentation. On the left, you will see that MCPS is requesting an FY2027 operating budget of $3.78 billion as compared to, on the right, what the County Council staff recommends for allocation to MCPS at maintenance of effort level of $3.35 billion. The gap or unmet revenue request is estimated to be $420 million, in my opinion. MCPS or County Council, please correct the record if you disagree. I've asked MCPS's leadership staff to also confirm my understanding as we continue to discuss in the community. The County Council has the power of the purse and funds MCPS each year. Our presentation will focus on areas within MCPS's budget request that board members, the superintendent, and County Council can temper their request funding to reflect current economic conditions and declining student enrollment. Please note that if MCPS requests an operating budget in excess of the state mandated maintenance of effort requirements, which they have done each year in recent years, they are required to provide significant justification and detailed explanations to the County Council. While MOE dictates the minimum per pupil funding, it rarely covers rising costs for things like staff compensation, utilities, and new programs. So
Okay. Oh, we do have one question. Why is declining school enrollment considered negative?
So declining school enrollment, well, in my opinion, I don't know if it's so much considered negative. It's more about the correlation that it has towards the budget, right? And so when taxpayers and the county council funds MCPS, it's based on a per pupil funding. And so as enrollment was increasing in earlier years, the budget increased. And so now that enrollment is decreasing, the expectation would be that there would be that direct correlation of decreasing enrollment, decreasing budget, or some justification as to why that should not be the correlation. And so I wouldn't say it's a good or bad thing. I think it's just a reality that we are facing and how to reflect that in our funding.
And one more question. What is the percentage of the budget going to administrative costs versus teaching costs?
That Gordy Brenny.
That'll be Gordy.
45% is the overhead rate for MCPS, and that seems quite high, as you probably know. In the general organization sense, world-class organizations shoot for 10% overhead. There are very few of those. Marriott Corporation locally is one of them. Others that shoot for 10% but miss often end up with 20%. And lower performers end up with 30%, and that includes the general county budget. And this 45% overhead rate, that's non-academic instruction costs, compares to a 37% rate in Fairfax County, our number one economic competitor. That's 37% for Fairfax County Public Schools.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gordy. Okay, so we will continue. So our recommendation to MCPS's budget staff is to improve and clarify in messaging to stakeholders. So on the screen, what you're seeing here is a year-over-year comparison of the total revenues that MCPS is requesting from the county council. And so while I agree that the overall increase in MCPS's recommended operating budget is 5%, it's important to highlight that the local revenue from Montgomery County taxpayers like you and I are higher at 7.7%. There's a reduction in federal revenue of 8.6 million, and that is due to lower student enrollment, not directly tied to policies. On the next slide, I just wanted to refresh our memories that last year, the current budget year that we're in, MCPS overall increase in their recommended operating budget was 10%, and local revenue from Montgomery County taxpayers like you and I were higher at 13.3%. These annual increases are not sustainable and do not reflect current economic conditions and declining student enrollment. There should be a direct correlation, as I mentioned, between increasing budgets and student enrollment. And so going back to the current FY 2027 operating budget, so unfortunately, the trend has been unprecedented. Taxpayer investments in MCPS during a period of declining student enrollment, yielding below average return on investment as evidenced in our prior slides. Earlier this month, Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich and County Council President Nadia Fonley Gonzalez are actively considering a targeted property tax increase to fund school construction projects. Keep in mind that property assessments, those blue envelopes that homeowners receive every 3 years in the county, has risen each year and averaged to over 12% for 2026, which already increases tax revenues to the county. It's conditions like this that make way for our annual budget Palooza to bring awareness, accountability, oversight, and advocacy to county taxpayers. So on the next slide here, this excerpt comes from FCPS's Table 1. So Table 1A, it shows the year-over-year incremental increase or decrease in the base budget from last year. Line 10 shows a proposed reduction to personnel in central services of 50 FTE positions. However, later in the presentation, you will see that MCPS added back approximately 65 FTE positions in central services in various departments at an expense greater than the 11 million reduction shown on this slide. So our recommendation to MCPS is to use clear language to show realignment versus reductions. Reductions make it seem like you're shrinking central services where that is not the case. And so here we're just clarifying the language to ensure expectations are in line with what's happening. On the next slide, of the 50 FTE positions, 10 FTEs related to pupil personnel worker positions were eliminated as part of the cross-functional team positions, mainly due to large reduction in enrollment. Each cross-functional team will still have multiple PPWs to serve students. Now I'll turn over the presentation to Joanna, if she's been able to join, to add context to the impact this change will have to the Damascus cluster. Joanna, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, thank you for having me. I am a Damascus cluster coordinator, and this is one of the topics that we did testify to the board about, because our PPW, who oversees 5 of our cluster schools, is one of the positions that is set to get cut. And our understanding is they're looking to reduce the number of PPWs throughout the county and expand the number of schools that those PPWs then represent. Our concern with that is, as student enrollment declines happen,
Montgomery College.
some of our students that truly need the support
Oh,
of these.
excuse me, can I interrupt? If you're
Oh,
not
sorry,
speaking,
I'll
could
let
you
you go.
please mute your phone or
How did
mute
your meeting
your
go with
computer?
Quincy?
Thank you. Could you please
What did
mute,
you talk
everybody
about?
mute? Thanks.
Thank you. So we're concerned about the PPW reduction because the students that these positions support are students that really have dire needs, and they're helping students that are facing homelessness. They're helping students that have family court cases going on and need to get transportation to and from school. They're helping students that are going through, some really traumatic things in their life, and their job is to help these students and families navigate those really difficult life situations and still be able to come to school. If they have transportation issues and nobody can get them to school, and these workers help those students so that they have that safe space and they still have that education. So in Damascus, we are a remote area of the county. And so, if we lose our PPW that serves 5 of our schools, and that position is now represented by someone that's a little bit further down county and spread a little bit thinner, we worry about what that means for, our students that are in those situations that really need that help. So that's one of the things we're asking MCPS to look at deeper is as the student enrollment projections decline, who are those students, and are you really seeing the need from these students decline, or is this just sort of part of a scale and a number system, and you're making these assumptions without truly knowing what that workload looks like, and if those students that need the additional support is also decreasing. I'll also note, because we have a lot of council members represented on the call, we have heard when we've been in conversations with council members that they want to see transparency from MCPS as it relates to both this operating budget and the CIP budget, which is so critical to us in Damascus for our high school rebuild project. And so that is one of the things that we testified to the Board of Education about, as well, is making sure that when they bring these budgets forward, there is transparency, and it's not just big chunk line items. There's details and there's information to back it up. Evan Glass, specifically said that to us, that, they want to know where this money is actually going, not just, writing a check and a chunk of money is going to some, unknown bucket that, we don't really see where it goes or what it's doing. So transparency, and just really making sure that with these declining enrollment numbers, we know the true impact these staffing decisions will have on our students.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for your advocacy and your work.
Thank you. We do have one question. My question is, where is the data to support or not support how the CFTs have worked with only 7 months under their new organization? Why are we eliminating positions before we have data to support the reduction? I'm not sure who that's aimed at, but
That's more of a note to MCPS, it sounds like. No, it's a fair question.
okay.
Gordy Brenny here. I'll jump on that.
Okay.
Cross-functional teams were introduced a year ago. There were a large number of people assigned to this function from central office. It was a very difficult year. The teams were not as effective as the superintendent had hoped. And the relationship between what the cross-functional teams did and individuals' school improvement plans was not coordinated. And as a result of that feedback, there was a serious look at how large these cross-functional teams needed to be to accomplish academic objectives, and proposed reductions ensued.
Thank you, Gordy. And I will add that during the budget session, MCPS, the cost to reinstate all PPW positions in FY 2027 operating budget is a little over $1.4 million. And they wanted to note that the state regulations do not specify a caseload for PPWs or these support services. But I do know anecdotally that there has been really good work done to ensure that students that are either chronically absentee, or as Joanna has mentioned, experiencing homelessness, that they are not lost in the shuffle, and that there's someone specifically assigned and responsible for ensuring that they are able to access their education.
Thanks. And there is just one comment that the CFTs just started in July of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question. So PPWs are effective, but CFTs isn't? I guess, Gordy, do you want to take that, or do we just?
They're both overhead activities. And in order for them to exist within the strategic plan that the board approved last June, they have to contribute to academic objectives. And the linkage has not been established.
Thank you. And so it sounds like we've gone through our Q&A, so I will keep rolling in interest of time. So the next section that we are going to discuss is the non-discretionary requirements. So this slide shows the non-discretionary requirements to be adjusted for in FY 2027, a total of $160 million increase in expenditures. According to MCPS, non-discretionary expenditures are items that are required by law, policy, or contracts that have been approved and appropriated. We will discuss the major components on the next few slides. So on this slide, MCPS is requesting employee compensation increase of 3.25% plus step, totaling $189 million for FY 2027, which was negotiated as part of a 2-year contract. As we stated in the current economic conditions slide, and I'll bring that back here, current economic conditions per Montgomery County Council shows that personal income increased only 1% last year. Our recommendation to MCPS and Board of Education is to revisit these contracts with the unions with the goal of reducing year 2 of negotiated contracts to reflect worsening economic conditions since last year. MCPS is reporting that the increase of 3.25% plus step is in line with the county government employees. Our recommendation is that both MCPS and our county government update their budgets to temper requests and reflect current economic conditions.
If I can just jump in at this point. So comparisons between MCPS salaries and those of the county are apples and oranges. Under the blueprint in the last 4 years, teachers' salaries have skyrocketed. Our average teacher makes $107,000 for 10 months of work. That compares unfavorably to Fairfax County Public Schools that only pays their teachers $95,000 a year for 10 months of work. A full year, an annualized salary at the MCPS rate is $127,000. And this is for less work. We have allowed teachers to allocate more time to working with other teachers and collaboration and planning. And so we had to hire more teachers as a result. So we have more teachers at a higher cost. And if you try and put this in the context of student proficiency, the student proficiency, which is not an effectiveness evaluation criteria for teachers, is only 15% in math for low-income kids and 35% in reading and literacy for low-income kids. Horrible. The strategic plan that the board approved a year ago in June says that within 5 years, they hope to cut the achievement gap in half between low-income kids and higher-income kids. At the rate of improvement, that won't happen.
Thank you, Gordy. And definitely let me know if any questions are popping up in the chat, Paula. Not,
There is just a comment, agreed, compensation increases should reflect the current economic environment.
Thank you for that. So the next item we wanted to discuss as part of the non-discretionary expenditures relates to MCPS is requesting employee health benefit plans contributions of $40 million to stabilize employee benefits plan deficit. We recommend that MCPS improves their transparency with the community as to whether it's active employees or retirees that's driving up medical service and claims costs in recent years. Of each group, are there specialty medications such as elective versus non-elective medications that should have different cost sharing between employer and employee? It remains unclear as to what the sustainable plan is to make this employee health plan solvent. Dr. Taylor stated during the budget working sessions that at the current funding pace, it is not likely that the employee health benefit plan will ever become solvent. We are $160 million in the hole. The size of the hole will continue to amplify as we plan to fill it at a current rate. Our question to MCPS is whether a self-insured health plan is in line with the neighboring school jurisdictions. Is MCPS competitive when compared to other competitors' employee benefit packages? When was the last time we analyzed MCPS's overall employee benefit packages for compensation, health, and pension to other LEAs in Maryland that we compete for top talent?
Okay, we have some comments. Do we have any information on what the compensation to MCEA is for $121 million? I'm not quite sure.
It's compensation for the members, I believe.
Okay, and then are you saying that teachers should or should not get the pay increases?
What we're recommending is that for our leaders and our unions and all the stakeholders to revisit the contracts to ensure that it is updated to reflect the current economic conditions. So I think there needs to be some puts and takes when it comes to sharing in the changes that we are seeing over the last year.
Right, and don't forget that teachers all get step raises regardless. Here's another comment. PPWs have been inside all schools providing direct services for decades. Being added to CFTs was an add-on to a full-time role, and that is now being used, to cut long-standing positions in Comar. PPWs are the only members of the CFT with full-time jobs inside schools, providing direct services. All homeless students, suspended students, students in alternative programs, truant students, and much more are directly served by the PPWs. So a comment there.
Thank you.
I'll follow that up and say, you know, our PPW in Damascus has said she is in her 5 schools 5 days a week. She doesn't have an office day that she uses. So her daily experience backs up what is being shared there as well.
Right. And one more comment. So you're recommending less COLA for teachers?
Yes.
Okay. And then a last comment, it should reflect grading statistics. So these are just some comments.
Yep, no, that's great. Thank you. Keep them coming. And so on this slide, what you will see is MCPS is projecting significant employee benefit plan expenditures for FY 2028 of 70 million and FY 2029 of 40 million. So that's in addition to this year, 40 million. I believe last year was another 40 million. So these large increases are not sustainable under the current economic conditions. And again, Dr. Taylor has mentioned that at this current pace, we still would not be able to make the plan solvent. So there really needs to be a sustainable solution proposed. Effective this year, an additional portion of the state pension plan shifted to county government. So that's a key note as we move forward in our discussion, that currently the state has essentially defunded counties by shifting their portion of the pension plan costs down to the local jurisdictions to pay. And so on this slide, what we were able to present is last year, Adam Pagnucco of Montgomery Perspective did an analysis on this issue. His research found that MCPS's benefits are generous compared to the private sector. MCPS employees pay 12 to 17% of their premium costs, while private sector workers like you and I pay an average of 21% of our premium costs for ourselves and 33% for our families. We recommend that based on the worsening economic conditions last year, MCPS and the Board of Education to revisit these contracts with the unions with the goal of increasing active employee share to cover the plan deficits. This would bring MCPS in line with the average.
I always turn off my camera, but
Sorry, we want to mute. Currently, MCPS employees get both a core defined benefit pension as well as a supplemental pension, the only school district in Maryland with this arrangement. As we just saw in the prior slide, an additional portion of the state pension plan shifted to county government. So now local taxpayers like you and I are on the hook to fund both pension plans. With no other district in Maryland with this arrangement and to temper requests to reflect economic conditions, we recommend MCPS and the Board of Education members to realign pensions comparable to surrounding school districts, which will lead to budget savings. On this next slide is another item for discussion. So line 20 and line 21 shows the 571 FTEs and $56.6 million budget impact of declining enrollment. This would reduce MCPS's operating budget because less students enrolled requires less staff in schools. However, line 22 shows school staffing standard changes being proposed to add back 420 FTEs at a cost of $34.9 million to reduce class size by approximately one student, is my understanding. Based on MCPS's classifications, this line should be reclassed from non-discretionary to discretionary items because it is not required to comply with law or policy or approved contracts. Earlier this month,
if I can just jump in on this one,
please.
Esther, this is the superintendent's notion that class size is important, and it certainly is, particularly in low-income schools where poverty has just worked havoc on the ability of kids to academically achieve. However, this non-formulaic change, this change to the formula that has been in place, would be focused on high poverty schools, which is excellent, but it appears to be only a one student class average change, which the literature is very clear on. That will not make a difference in student performance, going from 18 kids to 17 kids on average per class.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly the next comment. And that was echoed by one of our board members at the operating budget, where she asked MCPS, what's the problem we are trying to solve? And mentioned that we've already established that class size reduction does not impact academic achievement unless you go way, way, way low to 14 or less based on research. We are not seeing academic achievement increases because of the long established class size reduction in MCPS, so we're just adding additional layers to reduce workload for our already maybe smaller group of students. In light of the data, we recommend that MCPS hold taxpayers harmless and retain current staffing guidelines to temper their operating budget requests and reflect worsening economic conditions.
I have one comment. Have any of your recommendations being taken up by the county council and, for that matter, MCPS or Board of Education, I assume?
We'll be testifying in April on this to the county council, and we have an open line of communication with policymakers.
Thanks. And then, Esther, this is for you, just a comment. It says the grain note taker will stop recording and taking notes in 5 minutes. So I don't know if you have to fiddle with that or not.
Oh, I didn't know we had a grain note taker. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right, so moving on, and thank you again for the great comments and questions. I love the interaction. So on this slide, MCPS has presented a multi-year budget plan to retain a significant level of staff, like we just mentioned, increases in compensation and benefit costs, among other expenditure increases as MCPS student enrollment sharply declines. This is not sustainable, and as a board member pointed out, class size reductions does not impact academic achievement unless you go way low to 14 or less. And MCPS is not proposing that level of class size in their staffing standards. And so we would see the compounded impact to MCPS's budgets over the next few years as enrollment decreases and it's offset by retaining all of these staff and having smaller class sizes. It's just not sustainable.
Oh, yeah, here's another comment. Is there any direct correlation between the past increase in taxes and money going directly into the classroom? A lockbox configuration to confirm that additional taxes are not being swept into the general fund.
Yeah, I'd like to take that question. 2 years ago, we absorbed a near 5% rate increase in property taxes, and that produced over $200 million in additional revenue. We found that much of that money was allocated to general county government activities, not the school system, through supplemental appropriations that took place in the spring of that year. Money is fungible.
Yes.
And every time we raise taxes, property taxes and income taxes go into one bucket. They're combined. And out of that bucket, appropriations are made to the schools, appropriations are made to the various departments in the county. And whenever you raise property taxes, you run the risk of what happened 2 years ago, and that is this emergency funding for MCPS got diverted to the general county government.
Right.
Thanks.
Yep. So on this slide, you will see, as we talked about earlier in our presentation, here are the various line items that came back into the budget related to central service positions that have been established and realigned throughout the MCPS central office. And so again, you'll see that there are multiple positions. Some, as I've participated in or watched the work sessions, are for remediating findings, repeat findings from our state audits, for example, when it comes to technology and cybersecurity. And so I think more information is needed and more clarity around a lot of these central service positions and tying it into, again, non-discretionary requirements, which has to be required based on a policy, based on a mandate, based on remediating an audit. But other than that, we definitely take a deeper scrutiny on some of these central service positions.
Esther, if I could just comment quickly, all overhead activities have to associate with the strategic plan that the board approved last June. Right. They have overhead activity objectives, units of work that have to be improved to justify this additional spending. There is no justification provided for this additional spending. It doesn't align with the strategic plan.
Thank you. And here's a comment. At the same time, direct services in schools have been cut. The appeals office, which now has 6 administrator positions, a huge increase over recent past staffing, is receiving tens of thousands of dollars in staffing, costs and stipends for retired administrators to handle appeals. The first board budget work session video highlights these details. And that's really an interesting, thank you everybody for these really, insightful comments. And here's a question. Transportation increase is large. Has MCPS given a reason? And I think Janice will take that maybe now or later.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't have they haven't given a reason. I would just say that the word school buses isn't even in the budget. Yeah. They use the word transportation, but the word buses and the school buses is not there.
Awesome. Okay, so we will keep moving in interest of time. Thank you everyone again for joining.
It looks like, I have to say, it looks like we've stopped recording, unfortunately. We had a 45-minute limit. And I just tried to record on my own, but it says request host to start cloud recording. I don't know if you can do that, Esther.
It's still saying recording on my side. Hopefully.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so continuing on with the Schedule 1A, this slide shows the Maryland Blueprint for Education Investment of $3.4 million for FY 2027 and the cumulative investment of $50.4 million. And so we had some questions for MCPS around how much of the incremental blueprint increase of 3.4 million and is an unfunded mandate, and how much of the overall base budget, $50.4 million in the budget, is an unfunded mandate. Tracking that, I think, will be important as we work with our state and county partners to make them aware or keep them aware that there are certain unfunded mandates that are being pushed down to the local level that warrant additional funding. So our recommendation, MCPS to fund additional Blueprint Pillar 1 in early education expenditures by utilizing flexibility to defer the expense to the year that it's required based on the maintenance memorandum of understanding to bring immediate current year relief to the FY 2027 operating budget. Similar recommendation for all Blueprint pillars, MCPS to meet the minimum standard required in the budgets because we know we are requesting above the maintenance of effort. And so any savings we can find with sticking to the state level of implementation will help bring some relief to our local county. Okay, and this is just giving explanations of what those various pillars cover. So I will move forward in interest of time. One of the items that we have requested from MCPS, additional information, is around the dual enrollment tuition and support it should be based on financial need. I believe there's been some legislation introduced at the state level last year. It didn't pass, but essentially currently taxpayers are required to pay for all students, regardless of financial position, for their enrollment tuition, where we believe it should be need-based only so that the budget can go further. And then also to provide us with information around student outcomes. Are these students passing these courses? Are they receiving the grade, the college credit? What is happening with the tax dollars so we can determine what the return on investment is and how effective it is.
Okay, and here's another comment. Check local funding for community schools because other local jurisdictions do not have the local funding obligation that MCPS has.
That's right. And I believe that's unique to MCPS because, you know, we're still known to be the wealthiest county. And so a lot of the expenditures are borne by us based on
Two-thirds.
Right. And then also same for high school PSAT, SAT testing for all, regardless of income.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think similar to like we do farms for free and reduced meals, either you pay 100% or you get a reduced price or free. I think there should always be that scaffolding to stretch our budgets with any, program that we want to offer in the county. All right. Any additional questions before we move on? Okay. So the next section, we are going to go over discretionary expenditures. So again, a discretionary item is something that's not non-discretionary, which is required. And so for non-discretionary, you will see here, there are many items that MCPS would like to do based on their strategic plan. And what we are proposing is that MCPS just focus in on the items that will really move the needle. So for example, Adam had mentioned earlier, and we talked about the need for school safety, improved school safety. So you can see here that MCPS elementary school-based safety of $1.7 million is being
Line
proposed.
52.
On line 52. And I don't agree that that item is discretionary. I think a discretionary item as defined, right, and is required by law, policy, or contract. The worst mass school shooting in America was at an elementary school. The recent MCPS wannabe school shooter manifesto was targeting our elementary school students. And so system-wide safety, elementary school-based safety should be moved up into the non-discretionary expenditure section based on maintaining operations. Further, MCPS's policy should be revised to reflect our core values as well. Dr. Taylor has stated that safety is our #1 priority before learning. So let's live our values in FY 2027 operating budget. And then further, this item should not be a 4 to 5 year phase in. It should be a non-discretionary for all elementary school and with higher priority level than smaller classroom staffing standards and central services overhead, which currently are listed as non-discretionary. The same way MCPS can revise its staffing standard guidelines to support adding additional staff for smaller classrooms. MCPS can revise its safety policy to require system-wide safety, elementary school-based safety personnel in each school. So here we just talked about the various items listed for discretionary. If you guys would like to take a look, I'll just post it for the recording, but we are going to continue to move on in interest of time. One of the items that we did want to call out under the discretionary section relates to the program audit coordinator. It's a new position that MCPS has proposed. It's a dedicated instructional program that will report to the Board of Education, and they will be able to take a look at whether there's any fraud, race, or abuse, or other things that currently aren't being reviewed by MCPS, instead of waiting and being reactive to the Montgomery County Office of Inspector General's reports and findings. This is a way for the Board of Education to really lead and be proactive in identifying some of those things. I don't know, Corey, would you add anything to that?
Yes, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Sorry, and that's this slide.
Okay, a few comments now. I would say the current economic situation of the county is not stagnant, but already in a recessionary stage. Somebody says, what about the cell tower monies? How much does the school make after paying the staff managing the leases, etc.? I featured MCPS in my talk. This is Theodora Scarrato. And then leadership's follow-up, including all supporting documentation to board inquiries, must be public, and that has not been the case for the past year, according to the board. Another comment.
Okay. All right. So then with that, this is just a summary of the items we just discussed and how we were able to walk the FY 2026 operating budget that's currently in place and roll it forward to the FY 2027 operating budget that's being proposed. So we've gone through questions. So then we will transition now to budget chapters, and that's you, Paula.
Okay, thanks. So this is just a quick overview of the budget chapters and appendices, so you can see how massive and the budget really is and what the school system does. There are 12 chapters, and chapter 1 is schools. It's all the schools, including special ed. There are 211 schools, and the missions are aligned to the strategic plan, which is allocate resources necessary to provide an exceptional education. There are 4 core principles, and it also aligns with the anti-racist system audit. So do you want to switch to the next slide?
If I can just, on this slide, that third
Yeah.
bullet, 111 schools, that compares to Fairfax County based on an enrollment ratio adjustment that is significant, startling, in fact. Fairfax County has 35% fewer school buildings. That results in our county having overhead for facilities maintenance and other activities that is close to $500 million. And the school system is coming to grips with the fact that we've got more schools than we need. The difference isn't in elementary schools. We're about 1-to-1 with Fairfax County on elementary schools. It's the simple fact that our middle schools and our high schools are much smaller. And we do not see the economies of scale that Fairfax County is realizing. That's the big reason why their overhead rate is only 37% versus our 45%. The difference right there is about $300 million.
Thanks. And then if you want to switch, but I just have somebody put in a comment here. I'll just read quickly. Collectively, we've seen a significant increase in property taxes, yet grades have been rumored to go down. Currently, we're hearing that the deficit in the MCPS capital expenditure would be handled through directed property tax. This is unacceptable in the current conditions of individual finances. And I think that is something that we're all feeling. It's true. Yes. So thank you for that comment. So I'm just going to quickly go through. Chapter 1, as I said, includes all the schools as well as multilingual education and special ed services. And next slide. Okay, so looking under the hood, each chapter begins with a mission statement and a statement on racial equity and social justice. So chapter 1 in their statement has things that the public should be aware of and can find out about. There are yearly staffing retreats. There are Google-based surveys for principals to submit staffing requests. And this is all public. This is all public information. You just have to know to ask for it. And you might have to ask a lot. There are yearly staffing meetings for special ed and use of trend enrollment. And then they also call out the Title I funds to supplement. Thanks. But these are the point I'm trying to make here is there's a lot that goes on. behind the scenes, and the public, if you're aware of it, you need to be and you can be at those meetings and you can ask for these data. Here, so for the whole school system, for the schools, we're coming up to $2 billion, which is an increase of, what is it, 99 million or 100 million from last year's budget. Okay, next slide. Chapter 2, school leadership and improvement. That includes sports, student leadership and activities, and Department of Early Childhood federal and special programs, all compiled here in Chapter 2. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's these 3 departments. And this chapter, I kind of was tearing my hair out. I couldn't really figure out how it was divided up financially. But the mission is part of it to set measurable goals for school leadership based on analysis of data. That means that any one of you can go in and say, what are these goals? How are you measuring them? Where are your data? Next slide, please. And then here we go. I don't know. This is something where I was tearing my hair out about, and I couldn't figure it out. But if you see, they seem to be removing staff from McDonald Knowles Early Childhood Center and the Up County Early Childhood Center. And this is from Chapter 2, page 16. But if you see where it says request, if you compare the 2026 to 2027, the positions are gone. Maybe they put them somewhere else. But the way the budget is constructed, there's no notes, there's no commentary. So I couldn't really figure out what is going on here. And maybe somebody here knows. Chapter 3, teaching and learning. Division of teaching and learning includes academic programs, curriculum development, multilingual education, as we know. Okay, next. Okay, and these are all the departments. And as Gordy points out, these are all overhead. These are all central office. These are not, they include the department to see that we're complying with the blueprint, Department of Consortia Choice, curriculum development, and so forth. So if you want to see where a lot of this is going, this whole chapter, it's not in the classroom. Next slide, please. And here we have Chapter 3, $5 million, ensures accountability for curriculum instruction, focuses on closing the achievement gap, but we really don't have any metrics for how's that coming along. They support on-house students, and this is the implementation for the blueprint. And then I'm going to pause here because we're getting comments. Right after the anti-racist system audit, MCS started cutting positions. And here, they're making the coordinators to the same as elementary school principals. The staff are not being removed. Thanks. So that could have been noted in the operating budget. Yes, that would have helped me personally. How much of curriculum is developed by staff versus purchased from companies? That is a very good question. We purchase a lot of our curriculum, as you know, because you hear about it. Next slide, please.
Yes, and I think here we get to Chapter 4. I don't know if you want to do a quick introduction, and then I can.
Yeah, and then I'm switching it off to Esther. Yes, this is the specialized support services. And here you see the budget, $190 million, provide a continuum of services for students from birth through age 21. So Esther, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Paula. And so in this chapter, it's titled Specialized Support Services. One of the key areas that we've seen a lot of advocacy around is the recent change within the Department of Special Education related services to eliminate some of the supervisor positions as a trade-off to adding directors. And so as you can see here on the slide, MCPS FY2027 operating budget proposes to eliminate discipline-specific supervisors in special education-related services, such as speech and language services, to one generalist supervisor FTE position for the entire special education department. And so we know on the next slide that students receiving speech and language services per school year has significantly increased, and of the entire population of special education students, the majority of them participate in speech and language services, like my son. And so what we were able to discuss in terms of impact of restructuring for special ed dedicated supervisor positions is on the cons side, current structure includes a dedicated clinically qualified speech language pathologist supervisor who provides clinical leadership, ensures compliance with IDEA and COMAR, and offers real-time support for over 12,000 students and nearly 240 staff members. And so MCPS has commented in their board meeting in their budget meeting with the board that there are no reductions of any special education service provider positions that work directly with the students. However, the rebuttal is that these speech language pathologists rely on their supervisors and their support system to ensure that they are making timely decisions and recommendations for their students during these IEP meetings, whether it's an evaluation or access to their education. And so if we are making changes to the support offered to these workers, even though they're not directly impacted by their jobs, we will see a reduced or a weaker potential IEP or service to our students because they do not have the specialists do not have the resources that they have come to need and rely on for their work. And so again, one of the questions is what problem is MCPS trying to solve? And to request that the Board of Education members delay special ed restructuring for FY 2027 and allow staff and families time to provide comments. Because again, we know last year we made unprecedented investment in our special education department for our students to have paraeducators, to have a lot of our part-time paraeducators now receive benefits. And so I think there's been a lot of changes recently. MCPS really needs to recalibrate, get some data, do evaluations, and then continue to see how they can best support their students. But based on the advocacy and activism that we've seen this year for the speech and language pathologist supervisor positions, it sounds like that change should be paused and more time spent in evaluating whether it is appropriate action or not. So I'll turn it back to you, Paula, for chapter 5. And if there are any questions in the chat, let me know.
Yeah, there are a few. Somebody wrote, how much of curriculum is developed by staff versus purchased from companies? And I don't know the percentage, but I know as you read, in the paper or wherever, a lot of the curriculum is purchased.
So
one of the things that I've seen, though, as I've watched the board meetings, was probably the opposite, that a lot of MCPS's curriculum is self-developed. And I think there has been a push recently to buy like the CKLA and other type of curriculum from providers. But I think historically MCPS has created its own curriculum. But one of the challenges that they're seeing with the bought curriculum is that it doesn't provide adequate support for like the special education students and their needs and differentiated services they would need in terms of accessing these new curriculums. So there's a pro and con to both. I do think that, relying on the experts and paying for one standard curriculum to be rolled out to the school system is good, but it's only if they're able to meet the needs of all of our diverse student populations of EML students or special education students, or would it be that we purchase all of this curriculum and then we still have to rely internally with our chief academic officer department to create that type of scaffolding and that type of resources for our diverse population. Thanks. And another question is, the state directs the curriculum, correct? And the answer somebody posted, not exclusively. The state determines the standards to be met. Each county public school system decides which curriculum they will use to meet those standards. And somebody posted about chapter 4. One question, a lot about it, would be how is the reorganization going to support academic improvement and support the families? Yes, I am one of the supervisors whose position was eliminated for FY27.
That's right.
And then, right, and somebody else, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
Somebody else posts, it's important to memorize titles of all admin positions so you see how top heavy it is. And this is increasing. The central office bed changes are a study unto themselves, as we found out going through this budget. And data are missing. Interesting. Thank you so much. Curriculum is self-developed for the middle and high schools. There's a lot of comments here. Yeah. Just because a corporation develops curricula does not mean it's better quality. I think we all agree on that. Mm-hmm. The current curriculum material needs to be seriously revised and reviewed as it's not providing the results in improving reading and math scores. And yes, that should be the main focus.
That's right.
Okay, so should we continue?
Yes.
All right, chapter 5 is equity and organizational development. And I'm going to turn this over to Fitz, who is going to talk about the equity. And this is the overview of the department. You can see shared accountability, and their budget was over $31 million, which is an increase of almost $4 million from last year. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Paula. Yes, my name is Fitzgerald Mofor, and I'll be presenting Montgomery County's only public charter school, the Mecca Business Learning Institute, also known as MBLI. The school opened last year for grades 6 and 7, and hopefully plans to grow through 12th grade. The school combines rigorous academics with a curriculum that focuses on career and technical education and real-world skills. The school superintendent, Thomas Taylor, prematurely recommended that the school system should close Mecca, citing special education compliance issues, delayed staffing, and bottlenecks in financing. The Mecca school has strong potential to improve proficiency for middle school students, as we see surrounding schools such as Montgomery Village Middle School, where only 5% of students are proficient in math. MBLI's current budget approach analysis, which I'll be covering right now, and the next slide starts with MBLI is funded through the standard Maryland charter model, where per pupil allocations from MCPS based on projected or official enrollment. The school started with funding tied to about 186 students. However, real-world startup challenges hit the school really hard. Delays in construction actually forced the school to temporarily locate in Bethesda instead of the original planned Germantown campus. Transportation became a massive issue as over $50,000 per month became a requirement for leasing and buses. Enrollment dropped tremendously and fell by 25% by late September, and enrollment decreased to around 92 to 95 students by early 2026. This reveals why the current per pupil based approach is insufficient. Per pupil funding is more sufficient for traditional public schools, but fails new charter schools with high startup costs for facilities, transportation, and special education services, which are expensive and legally complex. When enrollment fluctuated due to logistic concerns, funding was not flexible enough. MCPS noted they already dispersed more than per pupil allocations funding that was allowed, and unfortunately, due to enrollment drops, that actually led to the halt of payments and staff cuts, which eliminated 6 full-time teaching positions. Charters often argue that the formula shortchanges them on services the district retains or doesn't fully support. The budget presentation also is incomplete. Initial plans didn't fully anticipate or transparently model the risk of location delays, enrollment volatility in brand new schools, or the true operation costs for compliance in year 1. Later, MCPS had to request a detailed financial recovery plan showing gaps in upfront forecasting, contingency planning, and clear accounting for funding would adjust to actual enrollment. These, unfortunately, and the presentation didn't give a realistic picture of sustainability for an innovative startup like MBLI. You guys can see here in the bottom right, shows a graph of the student enrollment from Mecca from fall of 2025 to the beginning of 2026, and today's in February 2026. Are there any questions before I continue or move on? Any comments?
I'm not sure if this is, well, one question is, what does MECA stand for?
Mecca, I'm not sure if I have the exact name. Okay, so Walia Chase says mentoring by example foundations, college and career academics. So
No.
yep, it's a innovative school that focuses on career and technical education. So
Fitz, if I can just jump in for a second. What we did not find in Chapter 5 is any reference to this charter school. And yet it's very clear that the charter school was conceived and initially approved as a strategy to improve student proficiency.
Correct.
It is amazing that we couldn't even find in Table 1A any reference to the charter school. There was a reference in last year's budget, Table 1A, saying it was budget neutral, which is a hot button issue with the teachers union. So I just want to say that we're talking about this in the context of Chapter 5, because that's where all the innovative strategies are supposed to be. And it is absolutely crickets on charter schools.
Yes. Yep.
And that has not been voted yet.
Yep.
And
Go ahead.
sure, there was one more comment. When any of the public schools have problems, as they all do, the superintendent does not recommend shutting them down, nor do we hear the same approach for private schools. Instead, the goal is to find out what is not working and fix it. Why should this be any different for the charter school or other than it's not under the thumb of MCEA? That's a comment. No comment here. Okay.
Okay. So how can MCPS help? MCPS can help by implementing a hold harmless funding model and mechanisms for new charter schools that are in its first 2 to 3 years. They can also foster true partnerships by letting MCPS provide specialized transportation or special education staffing and services at cost, rather than forcing the charter schools to build staff unilaterally. I'll let them in, sorry. Staff unilaterally to ensure compliance with FAPE and IEP 504s. They can also create targeted startup grants or phase funding from the county or state, specifically for facilities and initial compliance support. Additionally, they can require and provide better technical assistance during the charter approval for rigorous budget stress testing and ongoing financial mentoring. MCPS can also make changes to the school which would make it fairer, ultimately, encourage innovation, and prevent promising schools like Mecca from failing due to structural barriers rather than educational merit. Yes, closing MBLI is indeed premature. It faces external hurdles from a delayed permanent campus in Germantown, which is now successfully moved in last year in December, that directly caused enrollment to dip. The school also has shown resilience. It's addressing corrective actions in good faith, and there are already over 300 applicants for next year. Shuttering it would let them in. Sorry. Shuttering would disrupt student mid-year school programs, eliminate Montgomery County's sole charter option, and send a fulfilling message to future innovators. I'll mute Brenda, sorry. MBLI has real potential to boost proficiency for middle school age kids. As we said earlier, surrounding schools in the area are struggling with proficiency rates in math and reading. MBLI models integrates business skills, entrepreneurial projects, financial literacy, leadership, and microeconomy into core academics. Parents report smaller classes, support a family feel, and excited kids who see direct connections to future careers. With stabilized enrollment, full staffing, and resolved compliance issues, MBLI can deliver measurable proficiency gains and serve as a model for engaging underserved students. So essentially, in conclusion, the budget approach doesn't support new charter realities like MBLI. The presentation also lacks key details and flexibility. Also, viable alternatives exist through smaller funding and partnerships. Closing MBLI this early would be a big mistake when the school is settling in and is poised to innovate. Let's give it time and tools to prove its value for our middle schoolers. Montgomery County deserves educational options and bold ideas. And there was this slide that showed this right there, the statistics of the surrounding schools. And this is why I firmly believe that Montgomery County and MCPS should put full fidelity in charter schools to provide educational competition and give kids an option to leave failing public schools in their community.
Thanks. I'll go through this quickly. Chapter 6, Technology Services, Department of Ed Tech, Student Data, and most importantly also the Department of Cybersecurity, which I think is going to be very important coming up. Do you want to go through the slides because and here's the technology services overview. Next slide. And the budget here is for over $46.5 million. Chapter 7, district operations. I'm going to hand this off to Janice Artucci. So, Janice.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for sticking with us. There we go. There's my first slide. Okay. This is supposed to be the contract management section, but really at this point in the evening, if your eyes haven't glazed over, what I'd like to call this is let's find some money. In the fall, the Montgomery County Inspector General released a review of MCPS procurement practices. You can see the results of that review on the screen. Record keeping issues, purchasing exceeding $25,000 without board approval, MCPS contracted with active employees for goods and services. For over 20 years, the Parents Coalition has been investigating MCPS procurement practices. During that time, we found fraud, waste, and abuse of education dollars. We have had investigations that were confirmed by the Inspector General and the Maryland Office of Legislative Audits, along with extensive coverage of our work in local and national media. The fall 2025 IG report once again highlighted areas where MCPS has failed to be good stewards of education funding. Particularly concerning was the funding that MCPS spent education dollars without Board of Education approval. Why does this matter? Well, every spring during the budgeting process, the MCPS superintendent will typically say MCPS is underfunded. Last year, the Board of Education was funded about $60 million less than what they requested. When that happens, the superintendent then typically cuts teachers, classroom supports, and curriculum. But never does the superintendent look at how MCPS is spending on contracts and where the failure to follow procurement laws and policies is costing the system money. How seriously?
If I could just interject, Janice,
Sure.
we're talking about overhead here. When
Okay.
we talk about these contracts. Thank you.
Okay. How seriously did the superintendent and the Board of Education take the fall findings of the Inspector General? Well, let's take a look. Next slide. Apparently not very much. The county IG isn't dedicated to MCPS and doesn't have subpoena power. The superintendent is free to shred the IG's finding without consequences. So here's a sample that I did, just a simple sample of a few procurements to see where we stand. In this example, I'm looking at $67 million in spending. On the left, you see the contract. Then in the middle would be how much was spent in a year or in a time period. And in the final column is the last time the BOE took any action on the contract. So let's start credit cards. Last year in FY25, MCPS spent $12 million on credit cards. The last time the Board of Education looked at this contract was in 2016, and they authorized it for $0. So the Board of Education has not discussed the use of personal credit cards for 10 years. The second thing we're looking at here is the electric bus lease. You've probably seen a lot about that in the news. This one is really odd because the superintendent has already spent $16 million on the electric school bus lease in FY26. But the printed operating budget that you have online says he's only requesting about $12 million for 27 and that he's only spending $12 million in 26. Well, those numbers don't add up. How come he's actually spent $16 million? What's going on there? And as I mentioned before, the word bus doesn't even appear in the budget anywhere, which is kind of a biggie considering the size of the transportation budget. The BOE has not discussed this electric bus lease since 2021. The contract's now expired and been determined to be illegal by the Maryland State Board of Education. Last week, we learned that the superintendent did not take the IG's report to heart when it was revealed that he had recently signed a contract for a weapons detection system without any Board of Education discussion or vote. A few years ago, the BOE estimated the cost of weapons detection system would be around $11 million. So there's 11 million maybe, we don't know how much. School bus cameras is another procurement from 2017 that's had its share of problems. Yet the BOE hasn't discussed this contract since 2020. The public has no idea why MCPS paid them that company over $7 million in FY25 or what's going on with the cost sharing that was supposed to be taking place. And then here's a curious one that I found. In the current year, FY26, MCPS spent $525,000 on Air China. Air China is an airline. Tickets, to, we don't know. Just, we don't know. So what should happen is I should be able to look at that expenditure, which I was able to pull up on the transparency database, which is hidden on the MCPS website, but I can find it. And apparently only I matter, because if you search for it on the website, you don't find it, but I have the link.
Oh, I just want to ask one question. Which year is it Air China cost was
This
reported,
year,
ma'am?
26, FY26.
Thank you.
So I was able to see that this money was spent. I should be able to take the words Air China, that procurement, and go to the board minutes and find where the board authorized that spending. I do not find any evidence. I suspect it's related to pickleball. I tried that. I didn't find it there either. The next item would
So
be,
I just wanted to interject. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
I just want to let you know, Air China, Beijing to Washington, D.C., they had a flight. It was closed during COVID, and Air China was not allowed to fly in United States for so many years, just to let you know. FYI.
Oh, okay. I mean, we don't know what this was for. I have no idea. So it shows up, they've spent the money. We don't know what it's for because we don't see the public process of this procurement coming to the Board of Education for a public discussion and a vote. So anybody's guess at this point. The BOE did vote on a lease for new offices, but only in very basic square footage terms. They didn't actually see the contract, which they never see contracts actually. And they didn't have the annual lease for all of the commercial office space they're leasing put in front of them. But according to, again, the transparency database, they're spending about $7 million a year to rent office space while abandoning paid for and tax-free school buildings. And the idea with schools is they're supposed to be on tax-free land, so you're not encumbering the school system with a lease, and they're not involved with property taxes and things like that. But that's not happening, obviously. So there's $7 million being spent on that lease. In the fall, the BOE was surprised to see, or I don't know if they were surprised, but we were certainly surprised to see that the superintendent was leasing commercial office space. But in the resolution, the superintendent didn't exactly explain that what he was renting was completely empty, and it was going to require a lease plus a $10 million build out, and another $441,000 has been spent on an architect to design the inside of this lease. So that the leases are coming out of the operating budget, the build out is coming out of the capital budget, but together you can see what that expenditure, again, that's abandoning property that the school system owns free and clear for a commercial. Both of these, the office and the commercial warehouse, are leases with escalation clauses. So this is only going to get more expensive. Next slide, please. On this last slide, I just want to point out a few things. The Board of Education has recently eliminated 12 of their business meetings a year. Previously, they held 2 a month for about 24 a year. Now they're only doing one a month, which means they have less time to discuss contracts. Not sure that's a good thing. All spending is now on the BOE's consent agenda. A consent agenda is typically an agenda where you believe everyone is in agreement before it even comes before the board. And so for an example, at the January 22nd BOE meeting, the board approved $10 million in spending on the consent agenda. And occasionally there's a few questions, but not much of anything is asked about. And that just slides right through. Now, and this is stuff that does go before the board, which is better than what the Inspector General and I have found, which is contracting that's not going before the Board of Education. The electric bus, back to the electric buses again. The electric bus scheme was supposed to be budget neutral. We know that was not true. It's never been validated, although it was nationally publicized to be a budget neutral scheme. That didn't work out. And what we're seeing now in the actual budget is that from 2021 to this year, the cost of diesel and electric buses, the cumulative costs of both of those types of transportation, has gone from 16 million up to 24 million. Again, the electric bus contract has recently been deemed illegal because of the failure of the electric bus contract to produce the needed buses. The school system went to a no bid diesel contract. Again, are we getting a good price on the diesel buses? Now we've had to go to a no bid contract. Is that the best price we could be getting on the diesel buses now that they're back to them? The school system, MCPS and the Board of Ed they know how to do audits. In fact, a couple years ago, they paid $168,000 for an audit of the MCPS Transportation Department. It was a great audit, it's a big, thick document. You can find it on the Parents Coalition website. ABC7 reported on it. It has never been discussed at the Board of Education. As far as we can tell, it was simply shredded. Another thing that has, again, not made the news and not been discussed is that last summer, MCPS hired an outside law firm to defend itself against 23 lawsuits that have now been filed under the Maryland Child Victims Act. The BOE did not actually vote to hire this outside law firm, but we can see from case records that they are now being represented by an outside law firm instead of the county attorney. And more importantly, the Board of Ed has not addressed the financial impact of having to defend themselves in these lawsuits and the potential risk if they were to lose could possibly be upwards of $1 million per plaintiff. So they could be looking at $23 million in payouts, worst case scenario, under the Maryland Child Victims Act. This is an act that allows people that were sexually abused in MCPS schools by MCPS teachers to file civil actions. So this is a new law that came into being last summer. And at this point, at least 23 people have stepped up to take advantage of it. Finally, we keep hearing about the enrollment having declined. Well, if enrollment has declined, why are there still 368 classroom trailers in use at an annual lease of $4 million? So that concerns me. Classroom trailers are basically overseas containers that don't last, fall apart, have critters living underneath them, and are moldy, and they're educating children outside of their brick and mortars building. So as much as you want to talk about school security, as long as we have kids outside of the main school building, those kids are never safe. There's nothing you're doing inside the building that's going to keep those kids safe because they're out there in those little containers, and they're not protected by anything you're going to do inside the school. So I would think if enrollment was actually declining, that would be a place where we would be looking to get rid of those things. I would just say also, we seem to be having a loss of transparency. There's been a number of things, troubling things that have come up recently, but one thing I discovered this weekend, the last 2 years of MCPS operating budgets have been locked and are now password protected. We're not going in a direction of more transparency, which was our hope with the superintendent. By not following procurement laws, the point of all this discussion is that diverts money away from teachers and classrooms. Parents, guardians, teachers, and students deserve financial honesty, not chaos. We discuss a lot here, a lot of things, and there's a lot of this, there's opinion, worked into all the different things we're talking about. And we all have different opinions. Be sure we don't all agree on everything that we're discussing here tonight. But what the Parents Coalition has always pushed for is a transparent budget and a transparent process so that all voices can be heard. So whether you want to spend something here or spend something over there, whatever your focus is, you want to be able to discuss it. You can't discuss it if it's under the table. And if it's under the table, there's money that's being diverted that we aren't getting to classrooms.
Awesome.
I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Janice. And yep, so we're coming down here to the wire, maybe another 10 minutes or so. Thank you everyone to sticking in with us. If there are any questions in the chat or comments, Paula, anything you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, there are. So I'm just going to read these because there are quite a few comments. Another recent note about PPWs, which is very obviously of interest to people on the call. Following recent ICE detentions of students' family members, the recent school shooting, and every incident of violence, a natural disaster, or another event of that kind, PPWs are immediately contacted by central office, including on nights and weekends, to provide crisis support directly to kids, families, and even staff members. 20 PPWs provided support at Wooten, and MCPS's letter only mentioned other positions. Less than 2 months after announcing the elimination of 20% of the department. The elimination includes the only secretary in that office who processes every change of school assignment request, COSA, C-O-S-A, in the county. And then there are other comments Somebody wrote Air China for the pickleball exchange program. Somebody wrote, it sounds like Dr. Taylor is looking for any excuse to close Mecca. We would need more Meccas all over the county. And then a question, could you post the link to the transparency database you are referring to, Janice? Thank you. Volt AI is a security system that MCPS is piloting in 3 high schools for 30 days for free. No report on the cost of the system should it go to contract stage. There will be a presentation at BCC in person on February 18th. There was a presentation on Volt AI at Seneca Valley High School last week. Magruder is the 3rd school. MCPS is also looking into other security detection systems, including non-AI. And then somebody posted a link for basis operating. Dr. Taylor has shared that the electric bus contract was a bad deal, but by previous administration, is the electric bus contract ongoing or being eliminated?
Yep. Let me just jump in there, Paula.
Please.
Yeah, no, the electric bus deal is ongoing. It's absolutely ongoing. The buses are still on the road and they're still on the lease. And the contract has twice now been ruled to have been awarded illegally by the Board of Education. I'm sorry, by the State Board of Education. They have 2 opinions now that say that the contract was awarded illegally. The Board of Education here hasn't addressed that. They're just pressing on, and they are actively fighting that ruling. So they have outside lawyers billing the hours, fighting that decision of the Maryland State Board of Education, and meanwhile still paying the leases on the existing electric buses. Yeah, I'll try to post the link to the transparency database on here. And as far as the Air China, one thing I'm never going to do is assume. Maybe it referred to pickleball. I don't know. Show me the receipts, invoices, and show me where the Board of Ed voted on a pickleball exchange program, because I haven't found it. So, we just like to stick to the facts. So, and as far as the Volt AI, the people from Volt AI have said that all of their customers sign on with them, that they're all very happy. So it certainly looks like a no bid contract has walked right in, because there was no discussion. Other companies didn't get to bid on this. We don't have any comparison of benefits and features. There's been no discussion whatsoever. And how the heck were these 3 schools picked?
Right.
Okay. And then somebody asked, they'd love to see the shelved audit from transportation. And what year was the audit? And you said you put it on the blog, right?
Well, it's been on the blog and ABC. It was done by CESO. And ABC7 reported on it, and it's also on the Parents Coalition blog. If you search CESO, there's about 6 parts. I think it's 120 pages. CESO,
so I think
transportation audit.
Everybody knows how to get to the blog, right? We can put it in the chat, the link. And then somebody else commented, MCPS is not transparent with the board. Why would they be transparent with parents and the greater community? No one seems to pay a direct price for accountability. So, we understand this, and this is why we do the Budget Palooza. No one seems to pay a direct price for accountability. The school system acts with impunity. What mechanisms actually exist to hold them accountable? It seems large spending amounts can be approved via the consent agenda, which bundles items into a single vote without detailed discussion. How can this be changed? Really, that's up to the Board of Education. They can call these out as line items if they want to. It's, you're voting. There's an election coming up. The Board of Education has candidates, so it's sort of on the voters to hold their feet to the fire. There has to be a discussion regarding the introduction of AI weapons surveillance systems in our school. Okay. And that's it for the comments. And then I think, Esther, back to you. We're just kind of
I have a question.
Going to the end. Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. Really enlightening, and the details are great. I had a question for the council members who are on the call, and also for the representatives of council members. Do you have any comments on the presentation thus far?
Yeah. Maybe they could put comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Because I see that we're at 9:06
Yes.
and this is supposed to last till 9. And thank you everybody for your
Thank you.
patience and
Yeah.
lasting, but I'll pass it over to Esther.
Yep. No, thank you for your question, Harold. Definitely please continue your conversations in the chat. We have about maybe 3 more slides just to wind this down. On the screen right now, what you're seeing is just a centralized list of recommendations that we've discussed while the presentation. This is another key slide deliverable. If you were in person, would be a handout really for our elected and appointed officials or leaders in our community to mull over and really think about here are the areas where when it comes to our budgets and our taxes that you would be able to revisit and just take a second pass to see if there's anything more that we can do to temper our requests and reflect the changing climate that we are in. And then on the next slide, these are improvements for MCPS specifically in terms of the budget. So our team definitely at the Taxpayers League, we do a deep dive. We read page by page, top to bottom of the operating budgets each year. And these are some of the requests that we have as involved and engaged professionals of ways that MCPS can improve their transparency, their clarity around what they're trying to do so that we're able to continue to serve the community in this way and be able to provide more answers and questions. So this is just more of a takeaway for MCPS to continue to improve in the way they deliver the budgets to the community. And then on this slide, the call to action. And so definitely continue to engage with us at the Taxpayers League on Twitter, X, or Facebook. Continue to engage with the Parents Coalition as well, as they've mentioned on their blogs. With the County Council, we know that in April, they will be taking up the budget. And so some of the advocacy work you can do as a taxpayer is to request that our government do not increase our property tax rates. So we know property taxes that we pay are based on the tax rate and the value assessment that we get in those blue envelopes. So the value assessment each 3 years is increasing already. So we want to ask the council to hold on any increase in property tax rates to really give us some relief in our personal budgets. And also no increase in a new dedicated property tax that's currently being considered by the county executive and the council president. And also no increase in the local piggyback income tax, as Gordy mentioned, are the 2 biggest taxes of the county, again, to reflect the current headwinds that's being faced by taxpayers in the county. At the state level, currently they're in session. And so we want to reach out to our state delegates to ask them to consider shifting the property assessments work from the state level to the local level, because we know our communities best and we're able to reflect the assessments in a way that truly meets what the market is doing. Also, the state maintenance of effort, again, how much taxpayers are required to fund our students. We want to have the state take up that issue again to look at the formula to see if it's really doing what it was intended to do, and to specifically look at the wealth factor adjustments, because as we mentioned, with some of the blueprint expenditures, Montgomery County taxpayers are having to cover like 30%, cover more than their fair share as compared to surrounding jurisdictions where their contributions are lower. And so we really want a reassessment as Montgomery County taxpayers have changed over the years, that it warrants revisiting the MOE, and also to eliminate expenditure allocation shifting. Again, the state has continued to defund counties and push down a lot of the allocations of expenditures that historically it was contributing. And so we want the state to stop doing that, and also eliminate unfunded mandates to the counties, again, related to the Blueprint for Education. And at the BOE level this year, they're currently picking up the budget on this week, I believe, on Thursday, February 19th. And we want to ask them to work with MCPS to have transparency in MCPS's base budget. As we just covered, the majority of it is the incremental increase year over year. But we need to look at the base budget. How much cumulatively have we spent as taxpayers for each area, and ensure that it is frequently revisited to say, is that base still appropriate to meet the needs of our students? And then we were requesting a dedicated OIG for the Board of Education, which is one of the positions that MCPS is requesting for this year. Again, we want more accountability in academic return on investment. We have seen declining high school graduation rates. We have seen the call from the Black and Brown Coalition to improve the proficiency and literacy rates for our Black and Brown students that are currently underperforming as compared to their peers. We really need to be laser focused on that. And then monitoring and evaluation of strategic strategy and programs and financial oversight of MCPS. And so this is the timeline that is coming up now. Like we said, on Thursday, the Board of Education will vote to tentatively adopt the FY2027 operating budget, and then it will go over to the county executive, where he will incorporate that budget in the county's budget, and then send it over to the county council, where in April and May, up until Memorial Day, I believe, they have to approve the budget, and then it goes back to the Board of Education to adopt later in June. And so this is just a timeline for your reference, and here are the contact information for our county council members and for our state delegates that work in Annapolis on education. Definitely screenshot the screen. The presentation will be available online. And then finally, thank you so much to all the presenters today for all of your hard work and research and dedication to really helping the community understand the budget. And we are definitely continue to be available for you as questions come up. But thank you again for joining tonight. Again, my name is Esther Wells, and thank you to all the candidates and elected officials and appointed officials that come out to really hear from the community. And thank you to the community for your activism and your advocacy. It really does make a difference. So
I just want to say I did put a link in the chat to the accountability database, and I also put a link to the CESO transportation audit. So both of those are now in the chat if you want to check them out before you leave.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks to everyone who came.
Yes, thank you.